Welcome back to this episode of Full Spectrum Living with CBD. I am your co-host Meredith, here with our hosts Jessica and Adrian, and we're really excited for this episode today because we have a guest, Chris Topper, who is the lab manager at Trace Analytics. So welcome, Chris and Adrian and Jessica.
Thanks, morning.
Hello.
Yeah, it's great to have you here today. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you, Chris, how you work with Bluegrass Hemp Oil, and Adrian and Jessica. How do you guys all know each other?
Well, we actually test Bluegrass Hemp Oil's products here at Trace to ensure they're safe for end consumers. You know, we subject it through a variety of testing, from potency to residual solvents, microbials, and basically we just ensure that the products that they're selling to the community are safe to be consumed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, Adrian, when you and your husband got ready to open Bluegrass, and you were kind of looking at everything in the industry, testing was a big part of what you wanted to do. So help us understand why that's so important to you and really the culture of your company.
They say today that CBD is the Wild Wild West. Honestly, back when we started in 2014, it was really the Wild Wild West. And even before then, a lot of parents were getting products sent to them from legal states, and they were told by the processor, the manufacturer, that it was one thing when in truth, it was the exact opposite. Or quite policy, see, I fumble over words all the time. Quite possibly it was not as pure or as clean as what it should be. You know, like Chris said, he was talking about microbials, pesticides. There's different things that are in the products that you don't want to be consuming. And so we thought it was very important as parents. We started advocating for testing earlier on. We started calling out other manufacturers and saying, if you're not providing tests, you're not really providing a quality product. It could quite possibly be, but it's not what you know, it's what you can show, right? It's what you can actually prove. And so we just feel it's very important in finding a quality lab like Trace Analytics is an important part of that process. Somebody that's trustworthy.
That's awesome. And we've talked about that in other episodes, you know, that there isn't regulation. And so really it's up to you as the owner of the business to make sure that you're providing things that are safe and meet the standards that you want to put forward. So that's awesome. And Chris, we're so excited to talk with you about testing and about that, what that looks like. So maybe you can kind of just paint a picture for us of the types of tests that you run on the products themselves.
Sure. So the most commonly ordered test, I guess you could say, would be a potency test. So kind of the breakdown of the cannabinoids in the sample being tested, whether that be flower, a tincture, edible, bath bomb, what have you, you know. There's all sorts of products out there nowadays. So potency is a big one. Microbials we test for the presence of E. coli, salmonella. I'm sure you've heard of these before. We also test for mycotoxins, which are not as commonly known, but very important. We test for two of the more predominant ones. These are toxins produced by fungi that grow on poorly cured plant material. So, little tidbit, I think moving forward, as you have these huge farms being harvested and warehouses curing, you know, large quantities of hemp, mycotoxins could be an issue moving forward. We might see them. And while they're not very commonly seen in samples, they're extremely toxic, extremely carcinogenic, and they absolutely should be tested for in hemp products moving forward as this industry evolves. To keep going, we do residual solvent testing. You know, we test for the presence of ethanol or butane or a variety of other solvents. We do pesticide testing. We screen for, I believe, over 120 pesticides at this point in time. We also test for heavy metals, the primary four: cadmium, arsenic, lead, and mercury, and terpene testing. We also screen for at least 20 terpenes at this point in time.
Oh, that's awesome. And you're doing all of that right here in Spokane, Washington, which is really pretty cool.
Downtown.
That you're able to get to that level of detail to help manufacturers really provide products that are safe and meet their standards. So when you think about the tests that you run and everything all the knowledge that you've developed, right? What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that are out there, like from consumers around products?
The big one right now, especially where the hemp industry's at currently, is the whole broad spectrum oil, non-detectable THC, tea-free oil. And there's
zero THC.
Zero T. It goes by all sorts of these names, And so, as I'm sure you're all well aware, the federal limit for hemp products is less than 0.3% THC. They actually specify Delta 9 THC, but I won't get too much into that. So with regards to potency and these tea-free products, now, from our side, if we cannot detect the THC in the sample, it's reported as none detected, right? Tea-free. The ability from one lab to another to detect a specific level varies, okay? So I've sent products to labs in Oregon and they have what's called a limit of detection. So on a certificate of analysis, you might see capital LOD. That is the percentage of THC that a lab can reliably quantify, the lowest amount. So if a lab's LOD is 0.2% THC and the sample has 0.18, the lab will report it as none detected, even though it's still there. And so you can see with a lab with a high LOD, if a person's consuming large quantities of this product, for extended periods of time and it accumulates, they may run the risk of failing a urinalysis.
And I would even say, like, if they're not detecting, if it had 0.18% THC milligrams per serving, you still could have, a significant amount. It might not even be long-term use. It could be a couple of servings, and that could potentially show up on a drug test. Chris and I had this conversation in preparation for the podcast, and I think that's a really big issue. And we've kind of, Adrian, and I have kind of noticed this trend of places putting zero THC, and then you look into it and it's like 0 point something THC, which is not zero THC. And to Chris's point, that could cost someone their job if that limit of detection is too high.
Sure.
So then that raises a question for me. So the limit of detection is not standardized from lab to lab, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Absolutely.
And I think that that's very interesting because a manufacturer who wants to sell a 0% or a zero THC, product could quite possibly do so by just choosing, quote unquote, the right lab.
Right.
Exactly.
Right?
Does that also vary per state, or, is it just across the board nationally, there's no standard for a limit of detection, or are there different ones per state? Or
no, at this point in time, due to the unregulated nature of the industry, there is no standardized testing. Now, we're actually working with the USDA, and we've actually just applied for a DEA license to kind of spearhead the hemp testing protocol moving forward.
Wow.
So I believe for our hemp testing, our limit of detection is 0.02%.
Wow.
And I know a lot of labs are around 0.2, so it's 10 times lower than the legal limit. And in the years I've been using Trace, I've never known of anybody consuming a product that was tea-free, blessed off by us, ever having an issue. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just thought it was really interesting. Like we see that so often. How would a consumer know what that level of detection is? Is it listed on the lab results, or do you have to call and ask them? Or?
You may have to call and ask. Certain labs will post this information on the certificate of analysis. You might see the actual numbers, in one column, and then you might see, like in faded ink, what their limits of detection are. If not, though, I believe labs are mandated to divulge that information. If questions. I don't think it's proprietary in any sense. So I would encourage consumers, or processors, other manufacturers, if you're doing business with a company, find out who they're testing with and find out what the lab's capabilities are.
Yeah. And do you feel like in the industry people are open with that information, or is it something that's just kind of brushed under the carpet a little bit, kind of more down, on the down low?
Honestly, I'd say maybe it's 50-50, I think a couple of years ago, everyone, even including us on the analytical side, everyone's kind of feeling out the industry, developing new methods, getting more precise, more accurate, more sensitive. Nowadays, I think the consumer is better educated, and a lot of them are more aware of issues like this. And so it's trending in the right direction. The issue is there's no regulatory agency saying, no, you have to operate like this, so it's kind of up to us and up to you guys to employ best practices.
It really absolutely is. And I would like to just say to the consumer who may be listening, like, ask for lab tests. We are happy to provide them. Any company that has standardized this process and been authentic in their testing process would be happy to provide them. But, I never get asked for labs. We have them posted in the store and no one asks. They want to know that you have labs. But if you say, yeah, I've got labs, that's good enough for most people. And I think they should really, as a consumer, not be so quick to accept that answer from most places.
Well, and I think, but it's also, it's not for the average person so easy to read or to understand. How do they know? Every lab test is going to look different from every other lab. So how do they know what to look out for? As someone who's in the business, of course I do, but Chris, if you were going to instruct someone who was kind of new into CBD, what would you tell them to look for first? And how to read the lab at least a little bit.
Sure. So the big thing I've seen in the hemp side of things, especially with isolates and distillates, more so from like processor to processor sales, is I'll get a COA for, let's say, isolate, and the cannabinoid profile is up top, great, and then below, there's 80 to 100 pesticides listed, and they all have the letters NT next to it. What that means is they were not tested. It does not mean no trace. So while they're populating the COA to look like all these things were tested for and it's all clean, it's not the case. Now that's kind of like a little marketing, little salesy thing going on. But you want to see, and on the COAs, the acronyms like NT, if you look at the bottom, it will say NT equals not tested. So if you have any questions on the letters used on these certificates of analysis, usually they're in a legend somewhere on it. And if you're confused, call your processor, call the lab, and ask them to elaborate.
And just to clarify, ND would mean not detected.
Not
correct?
detected.
So that's a little tricky.
which means whatever was being tested for showed up less than the lab's limit of detection, right? So I don't think there's any perfect test out there or perfect system that can guarantee absolutely zero. But as far as I know, 0.02%, I don't know anyone lower than that at this point.
Well, and it makes me think, why are we testing hemp this way when we're not like testing the corn that goes into our food? So what's different about hemp and its ability to maybe absorb all of these things and the need for testing? You were talking about that a little bit before we started recording today, that hemp is, used for some specific purposes and has some specific properties that maybe make this testing even more important. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, absolutely. So microbial potency, residual solvents, those are all pretty standard tests. The tests that are not mandated and often overlooked would be pesticides and heavy metals. I think pesticides is going to be more of an issue moving forward, as due to the passage of the Farm Bill, you have more and more farmers cultivating hemp, bigger and bigger fields. So the likelihood of pesticide drift from the tomato farm down the road increases, right? Furthermore, when you're processing hemp and you're concentrating the cannabinoids, certain pesticides can also be concentrated at the same time during that process. So pesticides are very important to be looking for test results regarding them. Heavy metals is an interesting one and kind of unique to cannabis. So the hemp plant itself is phenomenal and is actually known in the scientific and industrial community for phytoremediation. And what that means is the plant can absorb pollutants and toxins from the soil and basically kind of refresh the soil for a new crop later down the line. Fun fact, actually, they in Ukraine, they planted a bunch of hemp following the Chernobyl accident to absorb the radiation out of the soil. And this is not a new practice. They've used shrubs in the past, but hemp is unique in that the roots can go about 3 feet into the soil. And so it's got depth to its remediation. It won't just remediate the top 6 inches. It can really remediate that soil.
I think to draw the significance of that, of course, you don't want those byproducts in your plant or your extract material. But also I think as the industry grows and people are looking to replace, a tobacco crop or a soybean field, then, the mass production and scale of this is leading to, it is going to clean a lot of soils that were not treated organically. It is going to leach those toxins, and being known as a bioaccumulator and soil cleaner, I think it's a matter of time, or possibly already happening, that it's being used to clean soil, and the CBD that's a byproduct of that is then cashed in on as well. So I think it just becomes more and more important to make sure that testing is done, so how it was grown in the sourcing. I also wanted to touch on, when you were talking about the processing, just something else happening that we've seen a lot is the practice of baling your hemp like hay. It's not hay, it shouldn't be baled, it does need to be cured, and the mycotoxin issue likely would be really exacerbated by baling your hay and letting it not cure completely. So just want to kind of touch on that as the significance of
right. Stagnant airflow and water all locked up in that bale, and there's no, I guess, best practices at this point. Everyone's trying to figure out what's the best way to cure, and we're getting into larger and larger quantities, and it's all new territory, higher demand. I mean, so we all got to kind of, I really feel like, help each other evolve in this industry, and people who want to push it in the right direction get together and, and educate, the industry.
For sure. I mean, and that's, I think, what Jessica and Adrian have been wanting to do with this show, is to just share information exactly like this, because the more we know, the better choices we can make.
And the higher standard that the consumer has. Like Adrian mentioned, when we started in 2014, we were lab testing independently. We had in-house labs that we were trying to work with as well. So just on our own end, but having it validated by a third party. We've always done that, but it was not at all standard practice until the consumer kind of got wind that like it should be. They started demanding it. And now everywhere has labs, how authentic they are and what they're tested for. And then the marketing, the misleading that can sometimes happen behind that is a whole nother topic. But the consumers pushed for labs, and it became kind of standard, not because it was required, but because people asked for it. So I think the more they know to ask for, the more likely this pesticide and heavy metals testing is, when it doesn't necessarily always happen otherwise.
Well, I think there's also been a lot of investigative reporting where reporters have just pulled products off of shelves and sent them off to labs to test. And I mean, even on the very basic level of, is the amount of CBD that's on the label in the product, we've seen by far and large that it's just not happening, right? You can't even get CBD, much less thinking about the other possible things that are in there from pesticides or microbials or mycotoxins. Let's just talk about, can I at least get the CBD that you're promising me that I'm buying? So there's, I think, a definite need for consumers to be, to advocate for themselves and to really look into what's in the products that they're purchasing.
Well, and that brings me to, Jessica, you said that you don't get a ton of questions about the labs specifically, but when you do get questions from your customers coming into the store, or, from your customers online, what are they asking about?
Yeah. So I think so for one, again, I don't get many questions on labs, and that's unfortunate. So please start asking consumers. But when I do get questions, one common misconception that I get is there's 2 columns listed on the potency test. And one, I think, is the milligrams per grams, and one is the percentage. And could you kind of explain like the difference between those 2 columns and like what you would look for to make sure it has a federal legal limit of THC?
So the milligram per gram is kind of how we interpret the data off the instruments. And then we convert that to a percentage by weight, just because that seems to be the common manner in which this information is being given to the public. So as far as a federally legal hemp product, they're only mandating Delta 9 THC be less than 0.3%. not to trip up the consumer or the listener, but there's another version of THC called Delta 8, which is not regulated or looked at by the USDA or DEA at this point in time. And so while one's product could have 0.2% Delta 9 and 0.2% Delta 8, technically that's 0.4% THC. But the way the law is written right now, that's a legal product. So that also can muddy the waters as far as, well, this is a full spectrum, so it's less than 0.3 THC, but am I going to be okay with a urinalysis? So on the COA, while you're looking at those two columns in the cannabinoids, you should see a D9-THC, and you want to also see a D8-THC. So keep an eye out for both of them.
And then I think on the same topic here, THC and THCA are listed separately, correct? But as a whole, I've seen some debate online. I think I know the answer, but if you could clarify, like, are you for the allowable 0.3% THC max of Delta 9? That includes THCA and decarboxylated THC as well?
As far as the regulatory framework, they are taking the 0.87 times mass of the THCA and calling that THC. So after it decarboxylates and loses a CO2 molecule, that's where the 0.13% comes from there. But as far as most of the hemp products are tincture based or edible based, right? Ingesting that THCA is not going to aggravate popping hot on a UA, so to speak. Now, if you smoked it, then it decarboxylates. Now it's THC, and that will trip up the drug test. That's just called, without getting too complicated.
Okay. So I have a question. So without naming names of companies, just to kind of educate the audience, what's kind of the worst thing or some of the scariest things that you've seen in products that have been tested by your lab?
Yeah. So consumers, you should be asking for certificates of analysis, because this is unregulated in the Wild West, and not every manufacturer, or person in the industry has everyone's best intentions in mind. The worst thing I've seen was some CBG oil or CBD oil, and it had about 20,000 parts per million ppm of chloroform. Now, this is a chemical used in the Civil War to knock out soldiers before they hacked their limbs off with assault. The OSHA, the government's daily limit, like exposure limit, is 2. This had 20,000 ppm in it.
Oh, wow.
Extremely dangerous. And yeah, I've seen extracts with failing levels of isopropyl alcohol left over, pesticides out to wazoo, lead, arsenic, mercury. Lead's pretty common just because a lot of manufacturers, as they're scaling up, are buying old used equipment from like the 70s and 80s, and lead's leaching out of the metals. I've seen a lot in capsules. More to follow, as I kind of observe these trends.
Then do you know afterwards if those products have actually gone to market? I mean, that's one thing to test it, but you don't really know after that, like if they took that chloroform filled product and like went ahead and sold it anyway.
Wow.
And I'm sure it did happen, and that's the scary part of not having any regulatory oversight. So I think. So
there's if you saw something like that happen, there's nowhere to really report it, or, it's just on them what they do with the results that you find. Even if it is something you find is toxic, it's still on them.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And I guess the best we can hope for is just, the right processors, the right farmers, people who want to do it clean and proper, that they find each other and work together moving forward. I think that's at this point the best we can hope for.
Yeah. That's huge, because that's really echoing, Jessica and Adrian, what you guys have been sharing as a part of this show and these episodes, is that, it really is the Wild West, and you really do need to, it really is a case of buyer beware. So before we wrap up today, Chris, maybe tell us what you're most excited about in the industry right now. Like, what are you really happy to see happening, or, that you're really looking forward to in this next year?
Well, I'm the number of processors and farmers and labs and, and even retailers demanding testing or, a demonstration that a product has that amount of CBD in it or has less than X amount of THC, that number of people is increasing, which is very promising. It looks very good. I'm optimistic about that, and hopefully that trend will continue. Most of my exciting projects are on the processing side of things, isolating certain cannabinoids, converting cannabinoids from one to another, but that's a talk for another time.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Can I add one question I really want us to cover before? So could you quickly address any misconceptions that may be involved around the hydrocarbon processing? We do hydrocarbon process with our company, and we've had it tested through you guys for a long time. We know it's very safe, but do you have any experience with hydrocarbons? Anything to share on that kind of processing and the stigma associated?
I think, yeah. So from a scientist perspective and a chemist, the poisons in the dosage, whether that be water or oxygen, or orange juice, I mean, anything can kill you in a specific quantity. Okay, so the fact that if you're using a solvent to extract a compound and you get the end product tested and the solvent's not there, what's the issue, right? At that point, the conversation might be tailored to, well, how about the safety of the extraction process? In that sense, hydrocarbons can be a little bit more dangerous than ethanol, and CO2 is even less more so. But if it's not in the end product, it's not there. So there should be no cause for concern so long as it's not detected. I
really wanted to just get something out on that, because it is a huge issue that we face as people hear butane, and it's just easy to get scared. So I think it's great to just get the validation of, like, if it's not there, it's not there, and it's never there. So
and since you guys are testing with us, our limit of detection for butane is 1 parts per million.
Wow.
It can't really go much lower than that. And so when on your COAs, when you see ND, it means it's less than 1 ppm.
Actually is not there.
Zero, it's not there.
So thank you for that. That's fantastic. And I'd honestly even go back to the safety of the extraction process itself. I'd say if you have a butane spill, it's essentially gone in the moment, as opposed to an ethanol spill. Then what do you do? The cleanup and the absorption and everything else. I think the stigma around the unsafetiness, that's not even a word, but of a butane or hydrocarbon extraction method goes back to people doing it improperly or poorly, right? Not in a closed loop situation. Right. So that's just my little zing on the end there, but
this whole stigma, even though we're still dealing with residuals 6 years later, came about in 2010, 2014. People open blasting in the backyard, and just people who should have no business doing these things were
not
doing
using
them.
proper procedures.
Right. Nowadays it's all engineered, peer reviewed, closed loop systems. 304 stainless steel.
Absolutely.
Explosion proof everything. And fortunately, the industry is attracting, like recent, chemists and engineers, and so I think the quality of products is only going to get better. Just we as, people in the industry just need to emphasize to the consumer, demand a higher quality product. Just demand it. Put the pressure on us and on the industry to get better.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, if anyone wanted to find out a little bit more about Bluegrass Hemp Oil and the work that you all are doing, Adrienne, where would be a good place for them to find more information?
Absolutely. Check us out on our website, bluegrasshempoil.com, or follow us on our social media.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you all for being here, and a special thanks to you, Chris, for joining us today. For this episode of Full Spectrum Living with CBD, I'm your co-host, Meredith, here with Jessica and Adrienne, and we will see you all the next time.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.